Now, from CBS News Miami, this is Facing South Florida with Jim Defede.
Welcome to Facing South Florida. I'm Jim Defede, and let me start by wishing all the moms out there a happy Mother's Day. Now, on Monday, Governor Ron DeSantis signed the bill redrawing congressional districts in Florida. The new map, drawn using voter files and partisan information, could help Republicans pick up 4 additional seats in Florida. As we noted last week, DeSantis decided that he doesn't have to follow the Florida Constitution, which prohibits political gerrymandering. So while the governor is picking and choosing which parts of the Florida Constitution he wants to follow, a political firestorm is brewing as Democratic politicians whose seats were wiped out are now trying to figure out where to run. Jared Moskowitz seems likely to run in the newly drawn Congressional District 25, which includes Miami Beach and Aventura and runs up the coast through Fort Lauderdale all the way to Boca Raton and Delray Beach. His announcement is expected by the end of next week. The real mystery is what Debbie Wasserman Schultz will do. The longest-serving congressional Democrat in Florida, she has been in the House for more than 2 decades. She could run in the new District 22, but it is a district Trump won by 10 points. The more likely option is that she'll run in Congressional District 20, which is solidly Democratic, but it is also an area that has been represented by African Americans for the last 32 years. The district is 40% black, and there are currently at least 4 African Americans running in that seat, which means Wasserman Schultz will be counting on her opponents in the primary, splitting up the African American vote and allowing her to become the nominee. The Broward County Democratic Black Caucus has asked Wasserman Schultz not to run for that seat, and it is clear that if she did run, it would turn into an ugly and potentially racial affair. But again, it may be her best shot at remaining in Congress. This week, I spoke to State Senator Rosalind Osgood, who does not believe Wasserman Schultz should run in a seat long held by African Americans.
So, Jim, as you know, the Democratic Party has been held together through the strong coalition of Jews and Black people. We've always worked collaboratively with Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Certainly, I represent a district that's multiracial. I try to serve all of my constituents. But when you're Black in America, you have a different lived experience. It is critically important to have someone with your lived experience representing you in Congress to be a part of those conversations, those debates. We're just saying, don't minimize our opportunity. This is exactly what Ron DeSantis' intentions was. If you look at congressional 20 district areas like Plantation, Sunrise, it's kind of a map where the Black people live. So you pack many of us into one district, you crack out certain parts of the community, like you put Belle Glade in another district, people in Palm Beach. So the Black people's vote and representation is not equal, it's diluted. So if you have a race with 6 Black people in, and Debbie gets in that race, you know, maybe the thought is that the Black people will dilute the vote and it gives her an automatic shoe-in. I don't know if it's the easiest path forward with her. I did talk to her. She explained to me how important seniority is in Congress, and we want to keep her in Congress. But we're just asking her to consider running in the district that she was drawn into, or even in the coastal district where Moskowitz says he's going to run, where it's predominantly Jew. So when you look at what's going on in Broward, particularly Palm Beach and Broward, how the district's being tapped, it kind of gives incumbents like Louis Frankel, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, you know, Moskowitz, it's like they're vying to protect their seats. And what we're saying is we've been an ally. We've been a supporter. You know, we want to have someone with our lived experience. Let our community kind of decide through the voting process who that person is going to be.
Well, let me jump in and let me push back a little. As you noted earlier, you represent a multiracial, multicultural district yourself. I'm sure that the whites and Hispanics in your district think that you probably represent them well and are doing a good job, and you certainly are trying to do the best for them. Could you not see the argument that because of Debbie Wasserman Schultz's seniority, because of her standing in Congress, that she might be able to do things for Congressional District 20 that a freshman member of Congress, like either a Dale Holness or a Luther Campbell or any of the other candidates in there would be able to do?
The difference is when you go back to the history of why this seat was created during this redistricting time in 1992, it was to have people with Black lived experiences in Congress. And we can't move away from that historical fact. It's kind of like, as a Black person, you feel like we had Reconstruction. Then we got the Jim Crow, the poll tax. So now redistricting is being used to suppress our vote. So historically, for us, because of why the seat was created, it's like something is now being taken away from us. And we're just trying to explain and get Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz to understand how important it is to us in our community to have someone with our lived experience. Sure, she might be able to do things for our community, but she doesn't have the lived experience to fight on certain issues and explain why they're important to our community.
Do you envision that if Debbie Wasserman Schultz were to get into District 20, she would be counting on the idea that because there are so many Black candidates already in the race, that they would, as you mentioned earlier, dilute the vote or divvy up the vote, and that she could potentially win the Democratic primary with maybe 30% of the vote, 35% of the vote? Do you think that if she were to get in the race, that all of the other Black candidates should remain in the race? Or do you think that they should, among themselves, decide to galvanize behind just one candidate? And if that's the case, who do you think that one candidate should be to run against her?
And maybe they will decide to do that. I don't know who that one candidate should be to run against her. I think if she gets into the race, the community will come together and come up with a strategy to try to put our community in the best position to have someone with our lived experience. But Debbie has been an ally with us. So we don't want it to be us against Debbie. She has $2.5 million. She has other options. And we're asking her to consider those other options, that we could continue to work as allies together and not have this divide. The other issue is the overall party issue. People oftentimes talk about how Blacks don't come out to vote. Many Blacks will tell you in community, as you're talking to them, nothing changes for us with the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. So this has the potential to now also impact the governor's race from the Democratic Party perspective and a lot of other races, because Black people with Black lived experience want it to be fair. We want to have someone with our lived experience representing us in Congress. We've had it for 34 years. We want little Black boys and little Black girls to see somebody that look like them so that they can dream and have an idea of a possibility of an opportunity. We don't want to go down that road with Debbie. We want to continue to work in partnership with Debbie. She supported our community. We've supported her. And we just need her to pause and hear us and understand, it from and I know it's hard. When you don't have a Black lived experience, you can't imagine the difference it is when you're in that Black lived experience. And when we talk about erasing Black history, now we're looking at erasing Black representation. It is very important to the participation of Black people, what we're going to do in the future, and how we move forward.
If Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz decides to run in Congressional District 22, because I think that's the other district she's looking at, is 20 and 22. If she were to run in another district and not run in District 20, would you potentially get into Congressional District 20 in the race itself? Do you think would you be a potential candidate for Congress as well?
Well, I have a lot of people asking me that question. And you know my history, I kind of go with my community. I have to consider everything. I love where I'm at in the Senate. I get results. I work very well across the aisle because that's how I think democracy should be. I think we could have difference of opinions, but when we focus on people and prioritize people and issues and have conversations, we're able to get things done. So I have to consider everything. You know, I would prefer to stay in my Senate seat and do what I'm doing. But I kind of go with how the community pushes me and what the community asks of me. So I have to consider all my options.
Well, let me ask you this. If she were to run in that race, do you think that would then preclude you from wanting to get in and add yet another African American into the race to further splinter the vote? In other words, if she does declare for Congressional District 20, would that pretty much end any thoughts that you had about running in that district?
Well, it just depends on how the community moves. Maybe the Black community gets together and we decide who the best candidate is. We might decide it's Rosalind Osgood. We might decide it's Dale Holness. We might decide it's one of the other candidates. But those are all options. We're trying to continue to be in partnership with Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz. We don't want it to be her legacy that she remains in Congress by disenfranchising the Black community.
When we come back, a charity closely tied to County Commission Chairman Anthony Rodriguez is under investigation for how it spent taxpayer money. The county promised an audit last summer. What happened to it? We'll ask the man responsible when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back. Last month, the county held their annual rodeo and cowboy palooza known as Country Fest. The event is held at the Equestrian Center at Tropical Park, and the man whose name is plastered on many of the signs taking credit for the event is County Commission Chairman Anthony Rodriguez. The A3 Foundation was created as a nonprofit organization in 2023 to oversee Country Fest. After A3 was created, millions of dollars were allocated to A3 from both the county and the state. But then questions started to surface about how A3 was spending their money. CBS News Miami has confirmed from multiple sources that the Miami-Dade State Attorney's Office is conducting an investigation of A3. They have issued subpoenas and are interviewing witnesses. No charges have been filed, and those involved with A3 deny any wrongdoing. We will have more on A3 and the investigation in the coming weeks. But back in August, County Mayor Danielle Levine Cava said A3 would undergo an audit. A few weeks ago, I asked for an update. I think it was back in August that you called for an audit of A3. Has that audit been ever completed?
So as we did our internal review, and we've changed some of our procedures in response to how that occurred. And the more complete audit is being conducted by the Clerk and Comptroller's office.
And when do we expect that audit to be completed?
I would suggest that you talk to the clerk.
Because you don't have control of that.
Correct.
The Clerk and Comptroller she's referring to is Juan Fernandez Barquin, who was first appointed to that position by Governor Ron DeSantis in 2023 and was formally elected in 2024. I spoke to him recently, but before we turned to A3, we spoke about his plans for the clerk's office and how he wants to provide, and these are his words, full and radical transparency when it comes to how county tax dollars are being spent.
Well, first, I just want to clarify for the viewers, I'm clerk of the court, right? So I'm the administrative arm for the judges, but I'm also the comptroller for the county. So I have several county duties. And as comptroller, I'm the county auditor, county investor, accountant for the Board of County Commissioners, and the custodian of funds. So on the court side, I've focused on efficiency and making things easier for the general public to access our offices. I've created payment plans for traffic tickets. I've extended hours in several of our branch courthouses in order to make it easier for individuals to come in person. As far as the comptrolling function goes, what I envision is basically creating full and radical transparency for the residents of Miami-Dade County in the form of a dashboard, which is something that we've been working on, and we hope and we expect that before the end of the year we will be able to show that to the residents of Miami-Dade County. because I strongly believe that they, above all, as residents of this county, deserve the information and deserve to know how exactly the county is spending their funds.
I think that from a public standpoint, having an office that is there to do the oversight, and I want to talk to you a little bit about that oversight. And I know that in conversations with you previously, you said that it's taken some time for you to build up and actually hire auditors, because that wasn't really a function that was taking place before. Talk about how you are staffing to be able to do that important work of oversight and providing checks and balances to how the county is spending its money.
We're still in the process of building out that auditing department, but in order to continue the services of auditing the county and different departments, and specifically CBOs, community-based organizations, and even the payroll, we are relying on external auditors to do the work.
But I would like to ask you about a specific area that has been in the news. I know that back in August of last year, there were a number of issues raised with the A3 Foundation, which was created to support, the rodeo and Tropical Park and the equestrian center there. And there have been some serious questions being raised. When I interviewed the mayor recently, because she said that they did some internal review, they were planning on doing a review of that. She pivoted and said that the actual audit was being conducted by your agency. Where does that stand? Where does the audit of A3 stand right now?
Jim, that's a great question. So when it came to A3, the mayor's office was hyper-focused on A3. But when that came up to my attention, my immediate concern was not just A3, but all community-based organizations. So we've initiated an audit that's still ongoing right now of not just A3, but several CBOs, up to 15 different community-based organizations, to take a look at the safeguards, their internal processing, documentation, and what exactly, and making sure that the money that was allocated to them was being used and is being used in a lawful manner. So to answer your question, it's still ongoing. And once that is finalized, I'll be happy to do an update with you.
But that is, it has been a long time. Like, these issues were first raised back in August of last year. We're now some 8 months or more later. Why the delay?
Well, to be honest with you, I have severe staffing issues. The county, at post Amendment 10 and post the migration of the finance department and the auditing department to my office, I was simply just allocated the full-time employee positions. I wasn't given actual human beings. They kept those individuals and they reassigned them in the county. So I've had to staff up from zero this auditing office. And in addition to that, we're relying on external auditors to help us out on these different.
But I guess I also want to push back on the notion that you are in the process of editing or auditing some 15 CBOs and A3 as part of that. When you have a situation, though, where the public is being shown have some serious questions about a particular organization, A3, does it not make sense for your team, even with their limited resources, to dive into that specific organization? I think that you're right. There is a broader question to be asked about CBOs, but why not focus as well on A3 in the short term to be able to provide the public and the taxpayers that, as you phrase it, full and radical transparency on an organization that has come under fire, that we understand is under some level of criminal investigation because of subpoenas that are going out from the state attorney's office and others. Why not shine light on that specific organization first and then do the broader report about 15 CBOs later?
Well, I believe in a rigorous investigation, and I think it would be unfair to subject them to a rigorous investigation without subjecting everybody else to one. So that is something that I want to treat everyone equally. I believe in treating everyone equally. In addition to that, I believe everyone should be held to the same standard, and I want to hold all CBOs to the same standard. So not just rigorously investigating A3, but I want to rigorously investigate those 15 CBOs that we're taking a look at.
But those 15 CBOs haven't been in the news, haven't had allegations against them, to my understanding, don't have subpoenas being issued about their organizations. There certainly may be legitimate questions about them, but when you have something, if you want to sort of get the public to buy into the idea that there is full transparency, that the tax dollars that you're responsible for are being properly used, wouldn't it make sense to hone in on that? And have you been working with the investigators at the state attorney's office on this?
We have not been working with investigators at the state attorney's office. I am, from my understanding, there is a separate investigation going on with that. We're just strictly conducting our own audit on our silo, and with the results of that, it will be a public record, and we'll be glad to work hand in hand with the state attorney's office if they want to.
And I want to be very cautious with this, but I do want to give you a chance to comment on this, because the chair of the county commission, Anthony Rodriguez, I believe you and he are close friends. I know that you and he came in as freshmen together in the State House and worked together in Tallahassee closely. Are you concerned at all that there may be an appearance of a conflict of interest in your ability to hone in on A3, and that there are some who may view that your reluctance to just drill in on A3 and A3 alone for right now may be because of your association and your friendship with Anthony Rodriguez?
Well, I can assure you that my loyalty lies with the residents of this county. That is my number one concern, and that is who I represent here. I can understand why someone could potentially see or view this as some sort of potential conflict of interest, but I can assure them that I do not have a conflict of interest on this. I as an attorney, barred in the state of Florida, in the District of Columbia, in the state of New York, I believe in upholding the law. And the law for me is above all what matters, and also representing the residents of this county. So, and like I said before, I believe in radical transparency, and that's my goal. So even though I do personally know Anthony Rodriguez, I also personally know all the county commissioners. And each one of those county commissioners are tied into these CBOs also. So, I mean, this is something that if you say that about Anthony, I mean, you could potentially argue that with other county commissioners. But that is something that I am hyper focused on treating all of them equally, and showing the results of the audit.
Last question on this: have you spoken to the chairman about your review of A3 and the other CBOs, but particularly about A3?
No, it would not be proper to do that. I mean, as this audit is ongoing, all I can say is that it's ongoing.
Do you have an idea of when it might be finished?
I do not at the moment.
Again, we'll be doing more on A3 in the weeks ahead. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Well, that's all the time we have today. If you have any thoughts or comments, feel free to contact me at jdefede@cbs.com. Oh, how I do love hearing from you. Thanks again for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.